Welcome to the Hidden Truth Stories channel. Today, we're diving deep into an unexplored historical mystery. Long before electric clocks hummed on kitchen counters and glowing screens shaped our sense of midnight hours, Vermont held secrets older than memory. In a quiet valley outside Briar Hollow, an aging farmhouse stood pressed gently into the land, its roof dipped from years of snowfall, and its porch boards softened by generations of footsteps drifting into forgotten winters. Inside that farmhouse rested a peculiar wooden clock on a mantel carved from ancient oak, silent throughout the day, yet mysteriously ringing twice every night at exactly 3:07 in the morning. The clock had no gears inside, no metal workings, no pendulum, only an empty chamber that seemed carved for something unseen, and townsfolk whispered that sound came from memory rather than mechanism. Local stories claim the clock was discovered long before the town existed, found by a wandering trapper who followed two strange chimes through dawn mist and uncovered the object buried beneath tangled forest roots. The trapper insisted the ringing echoed like breath from the ground itself, soft yet insistent, a call rather than a sound, and when he brought the clock to settlers, none recognized its origin. Even Abenaki elders said the object belonged to a time before their own oral histories, perhaps shaped by forgotten travelers who listened to the earth rather than measuring it with charts or written words. The clock changed hands many times over the years, always keeping its strange nightly habit, always ringing twice at that same mysterious hour, as though obeying a rhythm older than the surrounding hills. Eventually, it passed to a quiet historian named Elijah Thatcher, who moved into the farmhouse after losing his wife and daughter, seeking solitude among old books and the slow comfort of rural evenings. Elijah spent his days researching lost fragments of early American history, cataloging artifacts that predated familiar records, searching for evidence of civilizations whose knowledge whispered beneath soil, rivers, trees, and the wind itself. When Elijah first heard the clock ring, he felt a curious calm instead of fear, as though the chimes were greeting him, acknowledging his presence, welcoming him into a mystery waiting centuries for attention. He began recording each night's ringing in a leather journal, marking moon phases, weather patterns, temperature shifts, and unusual feelings in the air, trying to uncover meaning hidden within the clock's quiet ritual. Night after night, the chimes repeated, never varying, never faltering, always two soft rings perfectly spaced, echoing through the house like footsteps of time itself walking gently across the wooden floors. Years passed, and Elijah aged quietly, living with the clock like an old companion. Yet unease crept into his journal entries when he discovered ancient symbols carved faintly into the wood beneath candlelight. The symbols matched markings he had once seen on relics from civilizations predating colonial arrival, suggesting the clock belonged to people who studied celestial rhythms and believed time was not linear but layered. Elijah theorized the clock's ringing aligned with a moment when these temporal layers thinned, allowing echoes from the past to seep into the present, creating a bridge between forgotten knowledge and living witnesses. Then one winter night, after decades of steady patterns, the clock rang 3 times instead of 2, a deep trembling tone that shook the room gently and sent Elijah rushing from his bed. His journal described the air thickening, the house tilting almost imperceptibly, and a faint glow forming around the clock, as though it awakened from centuries of sleep to reveal its true nature. The next morning, Elijah was gone, the farmhouse locked from the inside, windows undisturbed, no footprints in the snow, only his journal open on the table beside a single drop of melted frost. For more than a century, the farmhouse remained abandoned, aging quietly as seasons turned, hosting nothing but drifting leaves, whistling drafts, and the persistent rumor that Elijah's spirit lingered near the mantle. Then in recent years, a young archivist named Mee Carter purchased the property. Drawn by a brief reference to Elijah's disappearance she discovered in an obscure library footnote while researching early American artifacts. Mee arrived on an autumn afternoon when the maple trees burned bright with color, and the wind carried that comforting scent of cool earth, wood smoke, and the hushed patience of an old valley. The farmhouse felt strangely familiar to her, as though she had dreamed of it before, and when she stepped inside, dust rose softly in greeting, drifting like pale spirits swirling through amber shafts of sunlight. She discovered the clock still resting on the mantle, untouched for decades yet seeming somehow awake, aware of her presence, as though waiting patiently through years of abandonment for someone to listen again. Mee spent her first night on an old sofa beneath a worn quilt, listening to the woods murmuring outside, and the house settling itself around her like a tired friend stretching into comfort. At exactly 3:07, the clock rang twice, perfectly spaced, vibrating through the floorboards with gentle resonance, pulling me awake with a feeling not of fear but recognition, as though answering her arrival. Over the next weeks, Mee studied every carving in the farmhouse, discovering hidden compartments containing fragments of letters, mysterious charts, and symbols matching those etched faintly into the clock's smooth wooden frame. She found Elijah's journal tucked beneath loose floorboards, its pages filled with steady handwriting describing the clock, the ringing, and his attempts to interpret the patterns that governed its strange nightly ritual. Mee followed his notes meticulously, charting moon phases, atmospheric pressure, and moments when the farmhouse seemed to vibrate gently, like the faint heartbeat of something ancient dwelling beneath the land's surface. On the night of a full moon, Mee remained awake beside the clock, lantern softly glowing, air cool and still, listening for the two familiar rings that had become strangely comforting companions. When the clock rang, the sound grew deeper than before, and Mee felt the walls breathe gently, expanding and contracting like old lungs stirring from years of waiting, shifting the air with soft warmth. A faint silhouette appeared near the window, tall and slightly blurred, as though shaped from smoke rather than flesh, and Mee felt overwhelming calm wash through her when she recognized Elijah Thatcher's exhausted eyes. He raised a translucent hand, not in warning but in quiet acknowledgement, and though he did not speak, Mee sensed he wished her to continue his work, to understand what he could not finish. The vision faded like mist dissolving under sunlight, leaving Mee trembling not with terror, but with the profound certainty that time had layered itself around the farmhouse, folding past and present into one. Driven by this encounter, Mee explored deeper aspects of Elijah's research, uncovering evidence that the clock functioned as a resonant key linking temporal echoes, crafted by a civilization whose knowledge transcended ordinary measurement. She theorized the nightly ringing marked a thinning of temporal boundaries, allowing brief communication between eras, and she began preparing for a moment when the clock might repeat the ancient signal of 3 chimes. On the winter solstice, cold air wrapped around the farmhouse like a quiet blanket, and Mee sat cross-legged before the clock, her palms resting gently on the smooth wooden frame, feeling soft warmth rising. When 3:07 arrived, the clock rang twice, then paused, then released a third deep chime that rolled through the house like thunder softened into a lullaby drifting across centuries of memory. Mee felt herself fall into a dreamlike state, drifting through layers of time, walking through ancient forests untouched by settlement, guided by warm light pulsing gently beneath the ground like a slumbering star. She found Elijah standing beneath towering pines, looking younger, his features softened by gratitude, telling her with quiet certainty that the clock preserved memory, offering chosen listeners a chance to carry forgotten wisdom forward. He placed a small wooden disc in her hand, etched with symbols matching those carved in the mantel beams, and told her the knowledge would guide countless future seekers long after they were gone. Mia woke beside the fire in the farmhouse, dawn glowing faintly through frosted windows, the wooden disc still warm in her hand, its symbols shimmering faintly with meaning she could not yet articulate. From that day onward, Mia devoted herself to uncovering hidden histories across America, guided by subtle intuition awakened during her encounter, discovering artifacts that shed new light on civilizations once believed lost forever. Each night she returned to the farmhouse, listening at 3:07 as the clock rang its two familiar chimes, each tone reminding her of Elijah, the forest, and the depth of her calling. Mia knew the third ring would come again someday, but she no longer feared it. She welcomed the idea, understanding she had become part of a lineage stretching through centuries and whispered truths. The clock continued its nightly ritual, anchoring the connection between generations, carrying echoes of forgotten worlds into the quiet Vermont farmhouse, where time folded gently around those willing to listen with patience and wonder. And so the legend of the clock that rang twice became woven into the hidden fabric of American history, a reminder that time is more than linear motion. It is memory, resonance, and eternal presence. This mysterious journey ends here, but stay tuned for more untold stories in our next video. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any new stories. Thank you, and see you again.